Right, bear with me, I'm just back off holiday. So we're going to be talking this morning about 365, strangely enough, be it MIE, but we're going to talk a little bit about licensing. I'm not a licensing guru, I'm going to say that straight away. One of my colleagues, Kevin, has that pleasure. He's much better at it than I am. However, one of Kevin's issues was keeping track of who needs what and when do they need it, how much do they need, and how much are they spending. And with a large organization or even a medium-sized organization, that can get out of control pretty quickly. So we're going to go through a few things as kind of the history. It's a cliche, the journey, but it's true. We have been on a bit of a journey around this, and I'm going to share what we've been doing. And please, use that to inspire yourselves, or even think, actually, we're not going to go anywhere near that. Lessons learned, that's all very good stuff. Okay, right, come on, PowerPoint. Okay, so if we talk about kind of where we are, I'll rattle through this pretty quickly. The licensing swamp. The licensing swamp is who has this? Who has the software? When did they buy it? When did it run out? It's a mess. It's unpleasant. It's very burdensome in terms of people's time. Why have I got Office 2013? When are we due an upgrade? All that type of malarkey. That then leads you into death by software audit. We're either running automation or we're doing things we've got to ask people what they want and what they need. We also have issues in terms of overspend. Why are we spending so much money on all this software? Have people actually got what they want? And that's partly by people's desire for things to work, which is absolutely fine. It's, while we're here, could you just sort me out with X? And all those kind of little sort of microtransactions that go on, and they all build up to produce this rather, well, I said earlier, the swamp, didn't I? It produces this giant mess where we can't really see the wood for the trees, if you pardon that particular cliche. Okay, so to use a systems thinking approach, what if we didn't do that? How might it be better? So we've asked that open question to a few colleagues, and people have said that one of their main issues is if we think about the process of somebody wanting some software, particularly around Office or Project or Visio, things that are Microsoft 365 related, what their issue there is that they have to get a list of the people who want that. They have to get their usernames, and that doesn't mean much to a lot of people. They're used to just logging in with their email address. When you start talking about usernames, they get confused. Then we have to kind of get that username list to an operator or somebody in the DevOps team to upload that. And if the usernames aren't quite right, it gets confusing and messy. And quite frankly, it's a massive pain in the backside. So we decided not to try and make that process better, as in how can we make something that doesn't work very well work faster? Well, actually, we're going to take a pace back. What is it we actually need to do? Let's reflect on that. And it became apparent that what we needed to do is we needed to give people a way that they could see who's got what, easily get that information up to date, check things, and alter things. Okay, what's our choices? And the choices, strangely, seem to be SharePoint lists. So if you've not had the pleasure of SharePoint lists, I would strongly advise you to have a look. If you pardon the cheeky slide at the top, a table full of win. If you like Excel for holding data, may I suggest that you give SharePoint lists a crack? So that's what we've done. And by using SharePoint lists, and I will show you a demo momentarily, what SharePoint list let us do is it gives us a whole view of the Microsoft 365, what we call Office extras. That would be Project, that would be Visio, Power Apps, Power BI, enhanced versions. So we've moved recently from A1 to A3. So our staff and students both get A3, but we have what's called associates. They're people who we don't formally pay. So they're not kind of part of our HR system, but they're people who work for us and they're kind of on a contract basis. So they get a slightly different experience. But because they've got a lot of people in the associates area, they need different levels of stuff. Some need full Office, some just need to connect into the VPN, and they don't need 365. So we've been using that to kind of improve things. And SharePoint on itself, while it's brilliant in terms of kind of giving you that records management, what it doesn't do is it doesn't actually do the magic. It doesn't put people into groups. It doesn't alter the licensing for you. For that, we're using PowerShell. Now, you could choose not to use PowerShell if you were very good with Logic apps in Azure, or you were very clever with Flow or Power Automate as it is this week. You could use that as well. That would work. We've gone down the PowerShell route because most of our licensing is held in our local Active Directory. Okay, so let's move on a bit. So just roughly what the process looks like is we've created a SharePoint communication site and we've circulated that with colleagues in IT. Now, the reason we've done that is it is a little bit nerdy and a little bit geeky, and it might be a bit much for your standard sort of university colleagues to take in. That's not to say that they can't take it in or they're not able to. It's just that they probably don't want the level of detail that we need to write around. So the SharePoint site that we have, the Office Extra SharePoint site, explains things for an IT view of the world. There is a separate communication site which is more colleague facing, shall we say, and that has slightly different language. It's still the same message, but it's altered in a way to make it more readable. It doesn't go into the sort of nuts and bolts of everything. So that's where people learn about the things that they have. We call it entitlements. What am I entitled to? What am I able to use? It goes down that route. And then what happens is when someone says, well, I'm looking at my entitlements and I think I need Power Apps, or I think I need Power BI, or I need a copy of Project. How do I go about that? Well, they have a conversation with colleagues in our IT support department, and they can explain how much those things cost, what the process is, how things go. And then they can often have a conversation with what our licensing manager, Kevin, in that particular case. Now, Kevin needs to talk about money because not everything's for free. We do pick up the bill for some things in IT, but we don't pick up the bills for everything. So it's a good idea to try and set some ground rules in terms of what's available and what's not, so people aren't stung with a bill towards the end of the year, and we just kind of set some expectations. Once that conversation has been sorted out and people have kind of worked out what they want, then Kevin can have that work done with colleagues in IT, and they can help the other person get the information into the system. And the way we do it is, and I'll show this in a demo, but just quickly, what it does is we get people to put a list from our global address list from our Exchange system into the SharePoint, and they pick those people so we know by name and also the photo that who's getting what. Once those people have been awarded that software and the PowerShell magic happens in the background, those colleagues will then get an email, and that in that email it will say who ordered the software, what have they been given, and where they can find out more. And the other thing the systems does is it doesn't just give people software, and this might sound a bit mean, but it also takes it away. So if I apply on behalf of the team I'm in for 10 licenses of Visio, and I pay Kevin some money for a year, and I ring him up in a year and I go, you know what, the team just aren't using this software, they're using something else. I can then close my order with Kevin, and then he'll remove that record. And what the system will then do is it will eventually remove all those Visio licenses that I've bought for the team. So I'm saving money for my department, we're saving money in IT, and my colleagues no longer have the software that they don't need. So it's not cluttering things up. So that's kind of how that works at a high level. Okay, so let's try and get the demo going. Right, so here is our SharePoint site. As we can say, it's work in progress, it's not yet live. What we've got on here is a kind of, we talked about, there we go, look, there's entitlements, we've mentioned that. We're trying to do this from the view of the beginner. Looking at things through a beginner's eyes is not necessarily a bad thing. In some ways, being an expert, in inverted commas, is the worst thing you can be, because what you don't know as an expert is what it was like when you first arrived. So we've tried to build no idea what you're talking about by doing small amounts regularly and doing releases quickly and frequently rather than doing a giant big bang approach. And we can see some things down here about costs and things that aren't quite yet live. Okay, so standard SharePoint communication site, pretty easy to do. We've got, how does it work? So we've got the concept of a requester. So that would be a colleague. I would like project, please. That needs to be a conversation with the license manager. But the requester might also say, I don't know how many versions of Visio I've bought this year. Can someone help me with that? And that might be somebody on our help desk or service desk, as we call it. So that kind of gives you an idea of the roles that we've got. And then we've got a very quick thing on the SharePoint. I won't go through these, but what I will do is I will go straight to requests. Okay, so here is the SharePoint list. Now, for you to be able to replicate this, I'm not going to give you like a copy or anything to download, I'm afraid, because obviously some of the information is sensitive. But what we've got here is title and requester is just plain text. They're just standard columns. Project code is also text, but we made it mandatory because somebody needs to put something in. If they don't put something in, we don't know how to charge them. And it might be, I mean, this is test data, somebody has to foot the bill for it at some point. Now, that might be from a central budget, that might be from researchers, that might be from a group of students, even if they're having it bought by their tutor. That all works as well. Activity code is to do with research. You can ignore that. Now, product. The product one might be interesting. If I go to column settings, I have to do this carefully. If I go to edit, what we've done for us is we've made the product column choices. So people can pick from that list, and I'll show you that in a moment, to have the things that they want. Now, this approach has a good and a bad thing. So you need to be the judge of what you consider to be good. From a positive point of view, if I was running, say, there's the savings team. I'm running the savings team, and I would like them to have Visio on their desktop. And I'd also like them to have a Power BI author so they can create reports and share them with colleagues. Right, I've got 20 people in that team. They all need that same level of software. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put those names in. I'm going to give Kevin the money, and I'm going to go into the system, and I'm going to select Power BI, and then I'm going to select Visio P2, and I'm going to put those 20 people in there. Right, that's fine. What that will do is that's one record for me and the team and the people I need, and they will get what they want. In a good way, that's great because it's just one record. It gets more complicated if you want to move to a world where I say, well, I've got 20 people in the team. I want 10 of them to have project and Visio. I want 5 of them to have X and another 5 to have Y. Okay, it's very difficult to get that system completely perfect. So the route we've gone down is to say, well, let's just make it a very wide, broad scope, and we'll deal with the exceptions as best we can. Now, this system here, these choices, that's what PowerShell's going to query. It doesn't care whether it's for the product team or the savings team or information services. What the PowerShell system cares about is who has got project ticked next to their name. Give me a list of everybody who should have project. It will then get hold of that list. It will compare that list to the Active Directory group. If you are not in the Active Directory group, it will put you in. And when it's finished doing that comparison, it will send you an email to say, Richard, you've been awarded this product by whoever's the title is from here. And what it will also do is it will look at that list and it will go, well, according to this, Fred is in the group, but Fred is not in the list. Right, Fred should not be in the group anymore, and it will remove Fred, and Fred's access will be removed in time. So that's just using choices. The amount, well, that's just a number. What we don't have at the moment is we don't yet have a mechanism in which we can count the number of people in the people column and compare that to the amount. So that's something we're working on. I'm going to look at the people column, and if I go to column settings and I go edit. Okay, so what this is it allows you to select people from the global address list, the mailing list, you know, the address book that's inside your Exchange system, or Teams for that matter. What's good about this is that when I select somebody's name, I know that is the person I'm after. So there we go. That is definitely Vicky. So I've definitely got the right person. And all of these people will be emailed. If any of their information changes, for example, if, I don't know, if we've spelt Chris's name wrong in the global address list, and he rings up HR and says, hi, I need to change my details, he can do that. The system will update. He won't lose his licenses. It will just update and everything just taken care of. It's quite groovy in that regard. Okay, we added this last month, approver. So previously, if I rang up and said, I would like some license, I want 10 licenses, please, and I'm going to give it to these 4 people here, that's just got my text information in it. However, there wasn't really a mechanism in which I could give that information to a trusted colleague. So if I was on holiday and they wanted any changes, you've got a bit of a problem. So what we've done is introduce this thing called the approver column, and all that is people again. And what we say is, if you give somebody to be an approver, it means that they can ring up and they can act on your behalf. They're our trusted colleague. So that's kind of the system just there. So if I go in and I go new, sorry, I'm just online. Sorry about that. Right, so if I go Tuesday demo, requester, I'm going to put sales team. We don't have one, so I can use that. So there we go. I've got to put some information in, but I'm just going to put some dummy information in. There we go. I can ignore that one. Right, here comes the products. So these are explained on the other part of the system, but I could say I'd like project, please, and I would like, so we would expect someone who's editing this to have read the information that's on the entitlements page. We wouldn't be giving this cold to a group of people, as in colleagues in the university. And I'm going to give, let's have a look. Let's go with enhanced associates. There we go. And I'd like to buy 5 licenses, please. And then I can pop some names in. I'm just going to put a test user in for now. There we go. And I'm going to put, I can't put Sarah's name in because she doesn't exist, but I can put my name in. There we go. And I can click save. And off we go. Now that's probably going to be lurking down the bottom. There we go. So I can open that. Now, I can change all this stuff. That's fine. What we've decided to do, if I close that, is inside SharePoint, we have turned on version history. Now this is new, so it might take a moment. There we go. So what's really useful about version history is if we think back to how things were when we just had AD groups, if someone rang up and said, can you just remove everybody from the group because we don't think we need that anymore? And the person would go, okay, okay, right, okay, and they'd remove everyone. And then there'd be a problem because the people that they removed in good faith hadn't been told, or there'd been an issue, or we hadn't realized that the impact of that, removing the software meant they couldn't do something anymore. And then we've got a little bit of a panic on our hands as to how to get those people back. There isn't a mechanism in that for the AD group in which you can say, can you make it look how it looked previously? Could you just bring it all back? Okay, so now we've got to go out, get in touch with everyone and say, right, well, who needed this? And how do you deal with that chaos? However, with version history, what's nice is that we can go in, we can change this, and I could swap round, I could remove James, and I could put somebody else in, but that's going to make another version. And because I've got another version, and I think if I look at my top one, let's have a look at this one. Okay, version history. There we go. We can see the products have changed. We've got a different version going on. There we go. So it looks like in version 3, Chris and David have had their licenses removed. Excuse me, I've got hay fever. And we can see we've changed the products there as well. And we could, if we wanted to, restore that version. So if it was wrong, if that was done accidentally, we can deal with that. The other thing we can do as well, which is quite nice, this is new in SharePoint, is if I go to, I think it's the share option, people you specify can view. So I can change that and I can put in James Neutron, who's our test user. And I can say, hi James, it'd be even better if I could type. Here's a list of all your staff who have the software you wanted. Now I could send that off to James and James can use that to check. And he can click that web link. He can only see that tiny slice of the SharePoint site. He can't see the rest of it. He can just see this record and he can look at that and go, right, Richard, Vicky, David, and Chris. Oh, where's Ashraf? And Mike. Okay, we're missing 2 people. Oh, and Jane as well. Right. I now know I need to get in touch with some people and get it changed. That's fine. What we can also do, if I change that, is I could go allow editing, and now I can send that link to James, and James can now put people in here. Now here be dragons. This is a good thing in as much that if we think about the old process would be, Jim, can you give me a list of everybody who wants the software? Don't give me their real name. I know you know them as David and Vicky and Chris and Richard, but can you give me them as XYZ or 6142 and all this kind of IT username nonsense? Poor old Jim's thinking, I ain't got time for this, which means somebody else got to pick up that. I'm leaving. Okay, cheers. Righto. So what we can now do by giving James the edit right is, with a little bit of training, what we can do is we can get him to put the users into the system. So he knows that is so there's two Chris's there. Which is the real Chris? Well, it's definitely Chris Lockhart. Okay, are you sure that's the right person, Jim? Yeah, I know it is. I recognize the photo. He's got all the knowledge to make the changes, and he can get that done. So he does all that type of stuff, and off we go. And when we're kind of okay with that, we can change Jimmy's rights back down to just viewing, so he can effectively onboard people. And then when we're done, we can move him back down to view. And if he doesn't want anything to do with it, we can do that too. We can just deal with it himself. If it's easier for someone for IT to, in a good way, hold James's hand and work him through that process, well, guess what? We don't have to use James. We could get Chris to do it. It doesn't really matter. It gives us an option to do things. And if we do make a mistake, we've always got previous versions. And if we delete something, because it's a SharePoint list, well, we can just go into the recycle bin and we can bring it all back. So we've got a much more higher level of protection than we had before. Okay, let's get rid of that. Now, I'm not going to go through how PowerShell works because it's on the edge of my knowledge. But what I am going to say is that everything that we've done for this, we have done using standard PowerShell that's freely available on the internet. It's something called an OData query, if that rings any bells to you PowerShell whiz kids out there. It's fairly simple. You can do all that stuff, and then it's just a case of bolting those lumps together to get you the report and to do the email. I would say, do a test site, do a test list, give it a go, see how you get on, and work your way through doing that. And eventually you'll start to take a little bit of control of your licensing, at least from a Microsoft 365 point of view. Okay, so that's that. So now, if you want to, I'm going to open my Teams back up. If we would like to ask questions, if I could ask you to put your hand up, please, we'll take it from there.